Once you are all set up, you've received your welcome email and your production has been created by us. You can click into your production and you will see on the side panel that we have created in this template we've already divided it into scope 1 and 2 emissions and scope 3 emissions, and then additional measurements that your event might want to consider. Scope 1 and 2 emissions are required for all reporting on scope 1 and 2 emissions is required for all events. And scope 1, the reason for this is these emissions are fully managed by your event, and are only your event is the only organization responsible for those emissions. So your scope 1 emissions are your vehicles and transport services, any vehicles owned by the event or long-term rented for the event. So if you are renting trucks for the entire week or 2 weeks leading up to the event, if you are renting vans or cars to move people around, this is where you would report it. But this does not include the rentals of a shuttle bus company that might be moving people around and they are operating that on your behalf. This is only vehicles that you as an event are operating. Your scope 2 emissions are the purchased energy of the organization. So this is the electricity, the heating, any generators, any energy that the event is using to light or heat or power the venues or any productions as part of the event. So you will see those options in there. If you are taking energy from a grid, you would be looking at the information for the grid meter to figure out how much you used. And you can go in, you would find your country. So you could put in UK and then the energy consumption. And when it is a scope 1 or scope 2 emission, like I said, these are their controlled emissions. So these are emissions that as your event can fully control. So you want to make sure you click that box that says owned or controlled emission. You would input your electric consumption, and then you can see the carbon emissions as a result of that consumption. Once you are ready, you can click Save and Close. And you can do this we've divided it into your venue.
Sorry.
It's okay. We've divided it into the venue and then an office and any additional venues you might have. And you can always add more or delete if you don't have that. So if you don't have an additional venue or an office, you just click delete, or you could make a copy of it and add another venue, depending on your event's needs. Is there anything else from scope 2 that you would add, Mads?
No, I think what I would think about is just making sure that the invoices tells you your energy consumption. So that's really fast. You have already made those drafts almost throughout the production. These is what we call bundles. These are the main groups, this is the subgroups, and these are the bundles where you register activities. If I could add, maybe if you don't know anything about this, you can send this bundle to a colleague that will receive only this bundle. They don't need to know the tool. They will just receive a mail where they click the link, and then they see this with a short instruction here given on what they should do, and then they fill it out for you, and then they submit it back to you. So it's also a way to allocate tasks in your crew, internal crew, or retrieve data from your suppliers.
Right. So for an example, with the office electricity, if you have an office administrator or your financial team that has those access to those bills, you could send this request directly to them. I suggest letting them know it's coming so that they know what they're looking for, and then they can complete the data for you and send it back. And they do not need to create a profile in the tool. They just need to complete that one section of what you've requested of them.
Yeah. And do you want me to go into how to register vehicles?
Sure.
So this is vehicles owned by the LOC. That's vehicles you control. So here, Jen has created drafts again, so I can click it. And then the only thing I need to fill out is the fuel type, my country. It should be your country in your project. But if it's not, you search for country, and then you do that, and then you will get the energy mix, if it's electric, from your country. Then you measure either in kilowatts or kilometers. You can enter the distance. Let's say that you know that this motorcycle has driven for 200 kilometers throughout the event. You can do one aggregated registration of that. If you don't know how long it has gone, you can say it started in Tokyo and then stopped in
Yokohama.
Yokohama, of course. That's very short. It's just 30 kilometers return trip. And again, remember, owned, controlled emissions. If you want to override the dates of the activity, this is registered using the date you register it. But if you know it's 1 month back and you do this afterwards, you can override it here, if that's important to you.
Yeah, and you can use the description line to put any notes that you might have about that trip if you
Yeah,
want as well. You
that's
could put the person that did it or the reason for the trip. This is for your own event use and might be helpful, especially if you are looking at data year over year when we've done this for a couple of years.
so you can also create tags to kind of track certain aspects of your event that you want to monitor closely, and then you did like I did with the motorcycle. I gave it a tag, Yuko. This tag will be remembered. So if I want to tag other activities done by Yuko, I can filter on that on the front page here. Choose tags, choose Yuko, and then I will see all activities done by Yuko throughout the project, if that's of any interest for me.
Can you go into boats for a second,
Yeah,
Mads? To go over so boats, we obviously use boats in the swim portion of triathlons. And boats are one example of where we might have to go through fuel consumption instead of the kilometers used if we don't know the kilometers. So Mads, can you go over what to do if you don't have the distance for boats, how to input the fuel use instead?
yeah. For boats, in this case, often just lie still or drive a short distance and then lie still. So it's not about the kilometers. So then I would go here, search for either go to energy, fossil fuels, and diesel fuel, and then I will, because in most cases you will know the consumption of the diesel fuel you've used. So then I will write this boat or all my boats at this event had a consumption of 1,000 liters of diesel fuel.
And
That's
then at
how.
the bottom, we would maybe put a note just saying what, or in the description or something, just input, this is the fuel used across all boats. And this will just help you keep, as an event, keep track of what you're reporting on. And Yoko was driving this boat too.
He's trying, maybe it's a goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you would save and close that activity. As we showed, or as Mad showed in the previous video, all of this data can be used and can be found in the statistics and as reporting later for the event. So you want to be as detailed as possible in when you're inputting the data so that you can gather as much information as possible and learn as much about the event as possible. I think it's important to reiterate that the goal of the emissions reporting is to report as much as possible and then the next year report more, do a better job. It's not as important to be perfect in your reporting, but it is important to put in as much as possible and then continue to try to gather more information each time you do your reporting so that you can get a better understanding every year of the impact of the event, because that will help you understand the areas that are most valuable to reduce. So,
I just want to drop in on a short, but I think important point is that well, if you rent vehicles for transport of people or transport of supplies, you should inform your suppliers that you will need this data before the event and not after. So when you do an agreement with someone, that you be very specific that you need distance, what kind of transport mean they used, and what they carried, because this will help you immensely by collecting data. And you
yeah,
could also share the bundle, as I said, with the supplier.
yeah. And this is outlined in the emissions reporting tool kit that we provided your event as well. So under scope 3 emissions are not controlled by the event. It's required to report on scope 3 emissions for any event going for silver or gold certification with the Sustainable World Triathlon Sustainable Events certification. And again, reiterating that we know you won't have every measurement in this category. The intention is to collect as much data as possible, really work to be precise and get as much data as possible, and then do a better job year over year. So under scope 3, you will find water consumption, food and beverage, waste management, clothing and merchandise, signage and marketing, supplies and infrastructure, accommodation, and travel and transportation. So we'll go into each one of these very briefly. But scope 3 basically captures everything else that the event does. Under water, you'll see water consumption and wastewater and sewage. So water consumption is water used at the venue or your other office or on course, anywhere where you use water, and you go into it, input the amount of water used, and save that activity. This does include the water that you might be using to fill water barricades or water in cups for athletes, all of those measurements. Wastewater and sewage is all of the information from your toilet providers, and what they are pumping out of the toilets.
Yeah,
So food and beverage, this is going to be a big one for most events, and it's one of the most important ones. You will see under food and meals there, the third one down, Mads. Oh, no, sorry, back up.
yeah,
Yeah,
there.
that we have tried to fill in the types of food and meals that an event might have, but it's important to note that we don't know your event. So you can come in and you can delete ones that you don't use, and you can add ones you do. So let's say you go into food and beverage, meals, and you can choose specific items that you serve. And oh, we're gonna have some vegetarian stew. It's probably quite unlikely for an event, but you can choose whatever you want, and you can choose the number of servings or in the weight of the production. So servings are generally more likely for you to know. Um, so just keep in mind under the food and meals that there is a lot of flexibility in here about what you select, and you can try and be as precise as possible, or you could just choose a meal with white meats.
Yeah, sorry. I'll just finish this.
So what Mads is showing here is you can also use this as a calculator to see the difference between the various options that you might want to serve people. As he's shown a beef hamburger versus a vegetarian hamburger. Mads, can you just scroll down to the hamburgers for a
Yeah,
second?
I'll just finalize this. Sorry. Yeah,
So for the hamburgers, for example, he's showing the difference. You can if you're deciding what to serve people and you're using the emissions from those meals as a determining factor for that, you can see that the beef hamburgers are 2.5 times more higher in emissions than the vegetarian hamburgers. So um, use this reporting tool as an example of how to make selections that might reduce the impact. The example he has here as well, even with just within the red meat, the beef versus pork. Beef is a um, much
yeah,
higher.
it's almost 70% higher, and it's still red meat. So this is a significant difference. Big potential of reducing emissions just by going from beef and lamb to pork or chicken. But of course, those two compared in percentage, it's a huge dip from vegetarian over pork.
Right. So this is an example of how this tool can be helpful for you, not only in reporting the um, emissions that your event creates, but also helping you make choices that are more sustainable.
And can I just drop in on something? We see that the other users of the tool, they use this functionality while they set up and plan their events, and then they go back after, because there is where they can reduce and make smart choices, informed choices, and then they register activities at the end often of the event.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you exit out of food and meals, you will see that there are options, similar options for beverages. Again, you can input or remove whatever you need. A note here is if you're serving any soda pop or pop, that would count as mineral water because it is mostly just sugar and water. The other options under scope 3, we have waste management. So all of the various streams of waste that are likely to be produced by your event. Again, you can add or remove items that aren't necessary or aren't produced by your event. And we've divided this by venue. However, if you have the same waste management company picking up from all of your sites, they might not divide it. So you can combine it if necessary. Under clothing and merchandise, you will find athlete giveaways. This will include swim caps, the medals, race bibs, and any clothing or backpacks that athletes get as part of their race entry. We have our staff uniforms and items that they are given. And then we have additional items in here. It is blank on purpose. This is for you to add any additional pieces that your event produces or provides as part of the event. Under the next one is signage and marketing. So banners and scrim, photo backdrops, soft fencing, any banners or signage goes in here with venue and directional signage and printed products on paper. You can find the options. If you can't find the exact item that you've printed, consider looking for it by the type of material it is made of. So if you can't find the exact type of sign or banner that you produced, but you know it is made of vinyl, you can go in and select it based on material. So you could try typing in vinyl, and there we go. Find a wall vinyl there and add it yourself.
I think that's important point because emissions are not the specific products. It's more about what kind of materials you've purchased or used. So that's the main essence. And as Jen says, if you can try to look at it this way, you will find most of what you need. If you're just looking kind of on the specific product, it's hundreds of thousands of different products, and it would not be that easy to find.
Right. So that's a good tip for all of the activities that your event does. If you can't find the exact item, try to find it based on the material that it is made of. Supplies and infrastructure will cover all of more of the larger items from your event, your tents, any buildings, furniture. We've got both rentals and purchases in here. It's important to note if you already own the furniture item or you already own the tent, then you do not need to account for it in this reporting tool. This is only for new purchases or rentals. We assume that when you purchase an item for the first time, we account for its the emissions of its upstream life the first time. Carpeting, including your blue carpet, is included in there. We have office supplies, tech equipment. A lot of the tech equipment for your event might be coming from a tertiary supplier that is coming in to do their to do the tech for the event all as part of their job. They come in, they do all the rentals of this. So that would fall under their emissions, and you don't need to worry about that. You would worry about just the rentals that your event is directly paying for. We've got fencing and barricades. for the course, scaffolding, stages, any temporary infrastructure. We included cleaning supplies in here, chemicals and purchases. Again, these are items if the event purchases it themselves. And other items such as garbage bags, zip ties, cable ties, and then toilets at the bottom are toilet rentals. So anything that is rented by the event for the use. Toilets. Next, under scope 3, we look at accommodations. Again, these are hotel nights paid for by the event. So if the event is not paying for them, then you do not need to account for them. And you can go in and select the type of hotel and the number of nights. This is so it would be per room.
Yep.
Yep.
So yeah, it's the aggregated number of nights slept at the different kind of hotels.
And obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but the higher quality hotel, the higher the emissions tend to be because the amenities that they offer are more are higher, are better. So you can see that difference. There is an option too under accommodations for homestay, I believe, or private accommodation, or houses there. So that will account for anything that's any longer term rentals the event might do in an Airbnb or similar homestay style accommodation. And finally, under scope 3, the biggest impact that most events will have is our travel. So again, this is travel that is paid for by the event. So as an example, if World Triathlon is sending staff beyond the scope of the event or the requirement of the event, you do not need to pay for them. This is only, or you do not need to account for them. This is only for staff that the LOC pays for. So any technical delegates that are coming, your own event staff that are coming in and traveling, you would account for their travel if they're going by air, but you would also account for their commute if they're coming in daily. Most people are going to be on a scheduled flight in economy, I hope. And you can use similar to the scope 1 and 2, you can calculate the route or you can enter the distance. And choose, well, it's a lot of people coming from Toronto to Oslo. Big event. So you can calculate that data and put it in there. If you know that you had stopovers on your event or on your trip, you would do it as two separate trips. Is that correct, Mads? So if
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
Toronto to London and then London to Oslo, you would do that as two separate
Yeah.
trips.
That's
Perfect.
true.
So that's where you calculate your travel. We have supplies and goods. So this is shipping of any of your supplies and choose the way that it came. It's important to consider this early on in your event planning because if you can order things earlier and you can ship by a more reasonable transit option, you can greatly reduce your shipping emissions. For example, shipping um, by sea would be a lot lower emissions than shipping by air. And then finally, we have vendor and supplier transportation. So any of your vendors or suppliers sending people to the event, you want to account for those. They are your responsibility because you are paying those vendors or suppliers to be there. If you are not paying them, paying for them to be there, if they are a partner and they are paying their own way, then you do not need to account for them. We have added additional measurements at the bottom here, and these are measurements that arguably could fall under scope 3 or not. These are opportunities for your event to go above and beyond the scope of the event and learn more about the transportation of the various stakeholders that help make the race happen. You are not required to account for these, but they are, it's a lot of interesting information to be able to collect. For example, with athlete travel, you could do a survey after the event, find out and ask athletes where they came from and how they got there, and coagulate that data based on the number of athletes and get a rough estimate of how many of your percentage of your athletes that are coming via train, via car, via air, and get a rough understanding of the impact of all of that athlete travel coming in for the event. Mads, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, just on the athletes, if the different nations have federations, they would know how their athletes are traveling most likely. So you could share a bundle for each nation to each federation and get feedback from them.
Absolutely.
But for spectators, it's something else that's really hard to capture. But so that's about the survey you suggested, and then you make some statistics based on a certain number.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is all of these additional measurements are not, again, not required, but it is just interesting information to understand the broader picture of the impact of an event when you consider everyone that comes in to the area for the event. So our goal again with this report is to give you as much availability of resources as possible to measure the impact of your event and to learn more about how to start reducing that impact. We expect that in the first year, you will learn a lot about your event and learn areas that are challenging to collect data, and you will get better at it each year. But feel free to reach out and ask questions. I'm available, and Mads is available as well to support in the use of this tool. And we're really excited to see what happens in as events continue to report on their emissions year over year.
So can I just add a little comment at the end? The tool is designed to help you make informed choices. So you spend time on and effort on what counts and what's significant. The setup that Jen has provided helps you to navigate and find things really fast. Also very clear on what's required in scope 1 and 2 and 3. So in general, it's about finding out what you control and do something about what you control. And if you don't control it, and most of these things are in scope 3, how can you obtain control of parts of it, of all of it, and then start making measures there. And if it's outside your control, you should move on to something that you can control.